Today we will examine revenue generation in combat sports with a critical review of the conceptualization of pay-per-view, what it entails, how it is generated, how the fighters earn from it, among others. With the engines revved up and our hands on the steering, we will begin this race from the other side of this commercial break. Please to stay tuned.
Swift Dry Cleaners Limited, professional dry cleaners, best in dry cleaning and laundry services, and meets the needs of our consumers. Yeah, Swift Dry Cleaners Limited. Swift Dry Cleaners Limited. Swift Dry Cleaners Limited. Yeah. Swift Dry Cleaners Limited. Yeah, for clean wash and quick delivery. Yeah, Swift Dry Cleaners Limited. Swift Dry Cleaners Limited. Swift Dry Cleaners Limited. Swift Dry Cleaners Limited. For clean wash and quick delivery. Ooh.
Swift Dry Cleaners. Clean wash, quick delivery.
Thanks for staying tuned. Let's begin with what pay-per-view is all about. Pay-per-view is a television service through which subscribers can buy events to watch through private telecast. It is imperative to note that the broadcaster airs the event at the same time to everyone ordering it. Events distributed through pay-per-view are usually combat sports such as boxing and mixed martial arts, and other sports entertainment such as wrestling and concerts. In the past, pay-per-view was often used to distribute telecasts of feature films. However, the growth of digital cable and streaming media has ensured the subsumption of these modes of usage by video-on-demand systems, thereby limiting pay-per-view to live event programs and combat sports. A subscriber that wants to watch an event on pay-per-view is required to have a base subscription. It is pertinent to state that an active monthly pay TV subscription does not include the cost of an event being purchased on pay-per-view because the payment for an event on pay-per-view is separate. This distinguishes pay-per-view from pay TV. Pay-per-view events are usually in the premium content category and are therefore considerably expensive. When a boxing fan splashes $50 or more to watch a pay-per-view fight on television, several questions are often bettered in the minds of sports enthusiasts. Does the money go directly to the fighters or the hands of the promoters? What role do networks play? All these and more we'll find answers to once we get back from this break. Now let's examine how the pay-per-view deal works in the business of boxing. Over the years, the apparatus of pay-per-view has evolved. Customarily, it works like this. A promoter will make a fight between two fighters, along with an undercard to support it. The bout between the two fighters will be the headline event, while the undercard will often have lesser-known names. The promoter then approaches a distributor such as HBO pay-per-view or Showtime pay-per-view with the fight. If accepted, the distributor then goes to work clearing the fight with the MSOs. Now the MSOs are your multiple system operators. They control virtually the entire cable universe, and these include companies like Time Warner, Cablevision, Comcast, Cox and Charter, among others. Once the cable systems are in on the deal, they begin to run commercials for the event. Sometimes promotional materials are provided by the promoter, and on other occasions the cable puts together its own promotion of the event. Now let's take a look at the financial aspects of the pay-per-view deal. The standard breakdown of monetary details is a 10% fee off the top for the distributor, with 45% each going to the cable system and the promoter. So for example, if a fight is priced at $50 and Showtime pay-per-view is being used, it takes 10% fee off the top, which is in this context $5, while the promoter and the cable company both wind up with $22.50 per subscriber. So if the fight sells a million pay-per-view subscribers, the total earnings from pay-per-view for the fight will be $50 million. While Showtime pay-per-view's arm gets $5 million, the promoter and the cable network will each go home with $22.5 million. Now, aside pay-per-view, other streams such as live gates, also known as ticket sales, casino site fee, merchandising, international rights, among others, are sources of revenue in boxing and combat sports generally. If all these are added to the pay-per-view earnings, and it does not add up to the amount the promoter has guaranteed the fighters to earn, he will have to cough it from his own pocket, and that will be the promoter's loss. In boxing, the prize money for a bout is called a purse, which entails an initial guaranteed payment plus pay-per-view earnings, TV rights, and so on. So let's examine where the hundreds of millions of dollars from a boxing purse comes from. Using the highest grossing bout in boxing's history as an illustration, the Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao fight had a purse reportedly worth over $500 million. 70% of that money came from fans shelling out for a pay-per-view of the bout, which generated over 4.6 million pay-per-view buys at a fee of $90 each, which in turn generated over $300 million. Ticket sales for the bout made up for another $70 million, with international broadcasts rounding out the rest of the purse. A fighter with a bigger draw gets a bigger piece of the pie. By bigger draw, I mean a larger fan base, popularity, image, pedigree, a belt holder, and the likes. In the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, the purse was split 60-40, with Mayweather taking home 60% of the total purse. The split in purse is usually decided after a purse bid, which is the initial step in arranging a fight. Preempting your thoughts, the next question will be, does each fighter take home the entire percentage of a split? Well, to answer that off the bat, nope. It is not even close, because the biggest winner of a boxing bout in the United States, for example, is Uncle Sam. Yeah, Uncle Sam is the nickname for the United States government. The federal income tax rate for the Mayweather-Pacquiao purse was pegged at 39.6%, which is approximately 40%. So let's do a bit of arithmetics here, using Floyd Mayweather's earnings from that bout. 60% of $500 million minus another 40% in taxes after that is still $180 million, which doesn't seem like a bad payday, but the deductions do not end there. If a fighter has a manager or advisor, the manager or advisor often gets 20% to 25% of what the fighter makes from the fight. The promoter gets another 20 or 25% off the fighter's side of the purse, thereby leaving the boxer with just half of the money he has earned. However, deductions do not end there as well. Trainers and cutmen usually get 15% of the fighter's purse. And when one factors in 6 to 12 weeks of training camp, the daily rate of 2 sparring partners, food and travel expenses, hotel costs, among others, the fighter barely goes home with 10% of his total purse. The question then becomes, if all these deductions are made, do boxers really make money after putting their lives on the line for the entertainment of the people? Let's refuel this vehicle. We will continue the journey afterwards.
Oh boy, winning you was so easy.
I just couldn't stand those your powerful shots. That's what happened.
Really? Let's go to my place for dinner.
This fufu is so nice.
It's through unripe plantain flour.
True unripe plantain flour is delicious.
Yes, true unripe plantain flour is what I serve my husband for swallows. It's easy to prepare, fortified with vitamin A, low in sugar and cholesterol, rich in fiber that helps the heart, builds and strengthens the bone, and his energy level is boosted.
Through unripe plantain flour, no additives, 100% natural, a product of Pali Agro Products Nigeria. Through unripe plantain flour, available in all leading stores nationwide.
Let's continue this journey by accelerating to the big question: do boxers make good money? The sad truth is that most boxers are broke. Boxing as a sport is notorious for its high level of inequality when it comes to fight purses, and that's because it is highly capitalist, with the top 1% of boxers collecting 95% of all prize money. Considering only 2% of a promotion's purse is allocated to 70% of the fighters, the pie is already extremely small. And after paying everyone, manager, trainers, cutman, promoters, sparring partners, and every other personnel, as well as taxes, the average boxer is often left with peanuts. In the United States, money earned in boxing is taxed the same way as a normal office job, with the same individual tax bracket considerations. Hence, most boxers are taxed 40% of their earnings after the payment of all necessary personnel that has worked with them. So how much money does the average professional boxer make? Well, excluding sponsorships and endorsements, professional boxers who fight between 3 to 5 times a year earn an average of $400,000 annually, while well-established and big-name fighters like the now-retired Floyd Mayweather, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Saul Canelo Alvarez, and more make lots more, as they are just part of the meager 1% in boxing. The question would then become, how much does the pay-per-view boxers make? Professional boxers who fight as an undercard of a main event earn between $30,000 and $1 million, while the headliners of the main event earn from $1 million to the region of $40 million, and in some cases, over $150 million, like Floyd Mayweather's case. The more popular a boxer is, the more pay-per-views he or she sells, and the more promoters are willing to pay for him or her to fight. This explains why the main event earns up to 95% of the entire purse, a reflection of the high level of inequality in boxing earnings. A vivid example of this is the fight between Saul Canelo Alvarez and Daniel Jacobs, wherein Saul Canelo earned $35 million for the fight, while undercard fighters like Bilal Akari earned a paltry $30,000. So what are the reasons why certain boxers or some boxers earn more than others? Due to time constraints, I'll just give you 5. Some boxers earn more than others for the following reasons. 1. The fighter attracts a larger audience due to his pedigree or popularity. 2. The fighter gets a share of the pay-per-view purchases. 3. The fighter gets a share of the tickets sold at the gate. 4. The fighter partners with the right sponsors. And 5. The fighter sells merchandise and promotes brands. A critical examination of the 5 aforementioned reasons explains why the likes of the now retired Floyd Mayweather Jr., Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Saul Canelo Alvarez, among others, earn so much money than their contemporaries. In boxing, every fighter gets paid, even if they lose, and that is because professional boxers are always guaranteed of a certain amount from the purse which would have been agreed prior to the fight being scheduled. Now let's take a look at the top 10 pay-per-view sales of all time in terms of US buys. It's interesting that out of the top 10, a particular name appears 5 times out of the 10. Your guess is as good as mine. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Top of the list is the bout tagged as the fight of the century, which was a genuine blockbuster between two of the biggest names in the sport at the time, Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao. The bout generated 4.6 million pay-per-view buys, with Floyd Mayweather emerging victorious via a unanimous decision. The second fight on the list is the bout tagged the Money Fight, which attracted big numbers as the biggest name in boxing, Floyd Mayweather Jr., clashed with the biggest name in MMA, UFC precisely, Conor McGregor. Both fought in a bout that generated 4.3 million pay-per-view buys, with Floyd Mayweather Jr. emerging victorious via a 10th round knockout. Third on the list is the bout between Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather, tagged The World Awaits. The bout took place at the light middleweight division, and it was a super fight that sold 2.4 million pay-per-view buys, which saw Floyd Mayweather emerge victorious via a split decision. Number 4 on the list also has Floyd Mayweather Jr. in it, and it's Floyd Mayweather's bout with Canelo Alvarez. It generated 2.2 million pay-per-view buys in the light middleweight division, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. emerged victorious via a majority decision. Number 5 on the list is the rematch between Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson. The bout tagged The Sound and The Fury is now known as the Bite Fight because that's where Mike Tyson infamously beat the ears of Evander Holyfield. The bout generated 1.9 million buys, with Evander Holyfield emerging victorious as a result of Mike Tyson's disqualification. Number 6 on the list is the bout between Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. It sold 1.97 million pay-per-view buys, with Lennox Lewis emerging victorious via a knockout of Tyson in the 8th round. Number 7 on the list is the first bout between Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson. It sold 1.59 million pay-per-view buys, with Evander Holyfield emerging victorious in the 11th round via knockout. Number 8 on the list is the bout between Mike Tyson and Mark Neely, which sold 1.55 million pay-per-view buys and saw Tyson emerge victorious following a disqualification. Number 9 on the list is Floyd Mayweather's bout with Miguel Cotto, which sold 1.5 million pay-per-view buys and saw Mayweather emerge victorious via unanimous decision. And the 10th on the list in terms of the highest pay-per-view sales of all time is the bout between Jake Paul and Ben Askren, which sold 1.5 million pay-per-view buys and saw Jake Paul emerge victorious via a knockout. For most boxers, being on a pay-per-view event and headlining it is the goal, for that is where the mega money is to be made. The sad reality is that very few will be able to achieve this, because not every boxer will have a large fan base, will have the popularity, the image, the pedigree, or being a belt holder amongst other necessary factors that influences being on a pay-per-view event, especially headlining one. Due to time constraints, that's how much we can take on today's edition of the show. It's been The Arena on iBrandTV, and I'm Samson Oloide. Thanks for watching, and do have a great day.